Alone in the Dark is a heck of a lot better than I thought it would be. David Harbour and Jodie Comer star in this action horror title from developer Pieces Interactive. Early preview trailers looked really rough, but promising, and I'm happy to say that after beating the game 3 times, that it is a damned good time. You will attempt to uncover the mysteries of Dorsetto Manor, a southern Gothic-style mansion full of patients, one single weird-ass doctor, and a whole lot of intrigue. Allow me to break it all down in the XboxEra review of Alone in the Dark. The game begins with a choice to play as either Emily Hartwood or Edward Carnby. It's a little bit of a false one though, as you will need to play the game through as both to see its full story, as you attempt to unlock its extra alternate ending as well. Emily, voiced and featuring the likeness of Jodie Comer, has received a letter from her uncle Jeremy, who fears for his safety. She has hired Edward Carnby, played by David Harbour, a private investigator, to assist her. Early on, your choice doesn't change a ton as the game flows in a single direction. Both Emily and Edward will go through the same overall plot beats, though with very different cutscenes and dialogue shaping how the house's tenants view each of them. Emily is familiar with the place, and people are kinder to her in general. Edward's gruff exterior leads to more combative cutscenes and less overall help. Set during the interbellum period in rural Louisiana, you'll visit various locations in the region via interesting mechanics. The title doesn't really go for period-authentic accents for most of its characters, nor does it ever hint at the racial and societal issues of the time. It's really focused on Dorsetto and Emily's search for her uncle. Early on, your playable character will be affected by a painting and start seeing things the other character cannot. It's an interesting mix when you compare each playthrough with how scenes play out. To unlock a secret ending, you'll need to find key Langenapes, aka a fancy term for this game's collectibles. There are sets to find that add to the lore and unlock secrets, and they are in the main impetus you'll have for exploration outside of finding more ammo or health. After my initial playthrough as Edward, I felt a little let down by the game's ending, but once I saw things through as Emily, I got the context I needed to make things feel more complete. There are still questions though, and I honestly can't wait to see what the extra ending has in store. This is a survival horror puzzle game through and through on normal and hard difficulties. Easy is available as well if you prefer a more action slant on everything. One of the game's best features is the ability to turn on more direct hints on where to go or what to do in the options menu. You can have it obfuscated and more hunt and peck on how to advance if you prefer the older style as well. I chose to let it give me a more directed playthrough the first time, and then turned it off in my second run as I knew more of where I was going early on. Most of the puzzles are pretty basic enough, but they're just tough enough to make you feel clever without being overly frustrating. Moving around broken pieces of a dish to form a pattern, or moving paintings around so that the rot behind them flows freely is pretty damn fun. The only puzzle type I hated was the safe lock minigame mechanics, where the hints given by the game just were not clear enough, and I eventually had to either brute force it once or just luck my way into it the second time. The UI works well for sorting out what information you've gleaned in your investigations. Edward, as a seasoned private dick, is better at figuring things out right away and helping you along with his narration. Emily is new to all of it, and I found her frustrations believable, as she tried to piece together what was happening as her version of Edward just didn't believe all the supernatural shenanigans that were afoot. Alone in the Dark on Series X features decent shooting and movement mechanics. Edward and Emily are both rather fleet of foot, and aiming occasionally felt really precise enough to be called good. Far too often though, I found the default turning speed just a bit too much, as the aim acceleration is just high enough to throw you off in anything close quarters. The left trigger aims and the right trigger shoots, as tends to be the case in modern games. There are multiple weapon types that you'll unlock, and ammo tends to be extremely scarce on normal and hard difficulties. Easy lets you be a veritable Rambo, as you'll blast all the Lovecraftian creatures of the dark away with ease. The right bumper is a kind of strange feeling melee. It's a bit slow, and enemies do not always satisfyingly react to your hits. You will tend to stun them with the melee if they haven't already gotten too far in their own animation to attack themselves, but I felt like I took damage too much when I tried to conserve ammunition by walking up to monsters in the face and hitting them with my long, hard pipe. Up on the D-pad is your heal. They're just bottles of booze that you'll find throughout the world, and I didn't see any upgrade system of any kind for anything. Clicking in the right stick gives you a flashlight that is pinned to your chest and has unlimited battery power. I wouldn't really call Alone in the Dark full-on survival horror on easy or even normal, as the game is very forgiving in its mechanics and I rarely felt that close to death. There are occasional QuickTime events where you'll need to mash the B button to get out of stuff, which is also your dodge, by the way. There's little small enemies that fly around you, you gotta hit B to get them off you, and they will queue up behind you so that you have to do it 2 or 3 times in a row with no chance of escaping it, and it can be a little annoying when it happens. Not a little, a lot. Graphically, Alone in the Dark looks pretty darned nice most of the time on Series X. The game comes with 2 graphical modes, one targeting 30 and the other targeting 60 frames per second. I didn't really notice a major difference in the textures or lighting at 30, so I stuck with 60 for my entire playthrough. David Harbour and Jodie Comer's character models are a bit uncanny valley. They don't look terrible, and they emote really well, but it always was a bit of a porn star parody look if you compared it to real life. Derceto Manor and the other varied locales you visit all look pretty darn nice. If it was a late Xbox One game, I'm okay with that level of graphical fidelity as long as the gameplay and story are solid, and thankfully they are. As previously stated, you will need to play the game at least twice to get close to a full picture of the story, and that will last roughly 10 to 15 hours. It's a pretty solid amount of time for the story they had to tell, and it didn't feel stretched out at all, as there were a few repeating mechanics. The writing and voice acting range between good and great. David Harbour goes all in on the crazy shit side of things in his playthrough. He's yelling, grunting, moaning in pain, and fully committed to the performance. Jodie Comer's playthrough VO is more subdued, and her American accent is pretty damned flawless. She's a great actress, and like Mr. Harbour, she's all in on making her lines feel believable. Most of the side characters are what I'd call decent mid-AA level. You can tell they're putting on accents that aren't the norm for them, but it still works well enough to keep you invested. As for the plot itself, it's an excellent mix of what is real versus only in our minds, with a dash of the paranormal kind of obfuscating those lines mixed in. And I did run into a few issues with the Series X version of the game. I had it crash on me every single time I transitioned from Chapter 1 to 2, no matter who I was playing as, unless I skipped the cutscene. It was repeatable every time, and during Chapter 2, at random parts while playing as Edward the first time, my Xbox gave an overheating warning and shut down, which I've never had before, and I played 4 or 5 other games right afterwards just to make sure it was okay, and I had no issues. I was able to finish the game without any more problems, and the devs told me they hadn't had this bug in their testing, so there's always a chance it was just my machine. Wrapping things up, Alone in the Dark has come a long way from its initial showings. Clever writing, great performances by its 2 leads, and solid gameplay come together to give this franchise a new life.